Hey, what's up, guys? Belton here. I want to do a little build showcase and maybe get a little collaborative effort going on here because I've been super excited about this. I've been working on it for past couple of leagues and realistically, actually, probably for the past several years. Anyways, what it is a AutoCast Discharge build. In the same vein as Cast on Crit, Mjolnir, whatever it is. This is similar to that, works differently, so it's not quite Fakener, but I would maybe call it DeepFakener, let's say. Anyways, I know everyone always just wants to see a map to begin with these things, and I know I can be a little bit wordy, so I'll start with a map. Nothing special here, T16 Strand, and then just the Scarabs, nothing to influence it. We'll just do it normal here. Just so you can see what it looks like in the map. It's to be known right now, I'm actually using CoC effect in my gear, and not awaken, or actually, you know what, I'll switch it in. I'll put on increased area of effect, just. Alright, so here we go. So you can see with increased area of effect in there, we have pretty much screen-wide AoE. But even running CoC effect, you're getting about half the screen covered. And while the build, which I'll explain after in its entirety, is foundationally completely different than anything that's existed before, the playstyle feels very much like, the casted crit discharge builds of old. Be that Fakener, Cosprees, or even, the traditional Mjolnir back in the day. In terms of overall raw power, this is actually quite good. I benchmarked it against pretty much everything in the game this far. I've done Maven, Shaper, Cyrus, Guardians, mods, whatever. This is probably never going to be your boss killing build, nor is it going to shine as well as, some of the meta builds of the day, but it is incredibly fun to play. As you can see, it has a very similar playstyle. Once it gets going, this is due to the shrine actually that was on there, but this is a little absurd. I don't have Headhunter on, by the way, so that's not what this is. Yeah, well, ignoring that last little bit, because that was a little anomalistic, I would say. That's, we can't really benchmark with the shrine in place, but the earlier part, you could probably get the understanding of our feel for, how the build plays in terms of what it looks like. More so not to be focused on the absolute. Sorry, I'm going to turn the sound off in my head so I can think here. But just, thematically or stylistically, how it plays is very similar to those builds of old. I will explain as soon as we get to town here how the build works, the function, and, how it enables. And with the hopes that, maybe somebody who else is a discharge enthusiast such as myself. To case in point, Parandis flashback event. This is from 6 or 7 years ago. You can see I still keep that in there, racing as Discharge. And if you look through my Reddit history, you'll see I've had posts for Discharge for about 10 years now. I've been trying to find a good build and make my own builds for this for several leagues, and this is a very, very strong one. The strongest, I would say, since Discharge has been nerfed. So I'll explain it now. Anyways, the primary function of the build is to use... Okay, sorry, I gotta make that sail. The primary function of the build is to use the trigger a socketed spell when you use a skill with an 8-second cooldown. So that is our triggering function in this. We're not using cast on crit, and we're not using Cosprees. That 8-second cooldown is going to get overridden by the... oh, jeez. Nice little sails. That 8-second cooldown is going to get overridden by the Endless Misery, which makes it so that Discharge has a cooldown of 250 milliseconds. This will apply... Holy crap. It's like they know I'm recording a video. This applies irrespective of whatever other increases or decreases you have to cooldown reduction are. So no matter what, it will always be 250 milliseconds, or better known as 4 times a second discharge will cast. Sorry, pardon me for a second here. I'm gonna get this money. Another thing I suppose that is worth mentioning is that I have very, very, very expensive gear. That's by virtue of how I like to play the game. I spend a lot of time on the economy as well. The level of gear that I have is not necessary for this to be functional. So, don't discount the potential of the build just on that basis alone. That being said, it is not a cheap build to get going. Christ, dragon. Whoever says the ends of leagues are dead, eh? Okay, so sorry. So yes, the primary function is to put Discharge into a one-handed weapon, be that a dagger or a wand, and then using the June mod, which you can have on there naturally, or you can just craft it on yourself, and then having Endless Misery override the cooldown on this. So the trigger is coming from that. Thereafter, we are then looking for influence mods on the dagger or wand, such as socketed gems are supported by level 20 increased crit damage, increased area of effect. Socketed skills have 40% more damage. We have the trigger, you can get +2 gems, and then pairing that also with the Squire to effectively make Discharge be somewhere between an 8 and a 10 link in there, right? So Discharge being put onto 8 to 10 link, that's our trigger. Now, since we are not using cast on crit, it's trigger whenever a socketed spell is used. That means that we can try just to use anything. So if we use shield charge, that can trigger it. Lightning golem, that could trigger it. Phase run, anything, any skill can trigger the discharge. So what we want to focus on now, obviously, because discharge is going 4 times a second, is how to generate as many charges and the utility around it. Now, obviously, Blade Vortex has been cast or tied into cast on crit discharge or any kind of trigger discharge for about as long as they've existed, and that hasn't changed here. However, what's fantastic about this is that we don't have to use the traditional thing, which is scaling attack mods to get that Blade Vortex to work. So we're actually going to run a full 6-link Blade Vortex setup. However, and what's fantastic about that is that we don't need to use 2 of those for Cyclone and cast on crit. So we have a full 6-link. To use for that. On top of that, we don't have to scale attack mods as we used to in the past. Previously you had to have attack speed, you had to have weapon crit, you had to have either accuracy or hits can't be evaded. So you had to, despite the fact that all your damage is coming from spell, you did have to have some attack stuff. Since we're doing a trigger on spell, that's not the case. On top of that, in the past, Blade Vortex would really only ever be, at 4 charges, maybe 5 charges at best. Even in single target situations, it wouldn't be going that often because Blade Vortex didn't have the duration, nor could it cast multiple times at once as it can if you manually cast it. So when we're mapping around now, Blade Vortex is always going to be at full charges like this, which means that we're getting all of these procs to the point that we no longer need to use Vol's Protector, which was a staple of the build forever. So not being able to use Vol's Protector, which is, in the past been the only way to generate enough charges, really opens up our defensive and utility mechanics thereafter. So what we're going to want on the chest now is to have a 15% chance to get Power Charge on crit, which is a global Power Charge on crit. And then on top of that, we'll also have, that's increased crit strikes. We'll also have Power Charge on crit in there as well to affect the Blade Vortex, which at 10 charges hits 7.5 times a second. Now, obviously we want to stack Power Charges as pretty much any discharge build does. If you look at my character right now, you'll notice that I have 11 of them. So if we're discharging 4 times a second with 11 max charges, that means that we need to somehow be generating 44 Power Charges a second. That might seem a little absurd to you, however, this is where the next function comes in that is super important, and that is this mod here. The chance that if you would gain Power Charges, you instead gain up to your max Power Charges. So you can get 25% of those on oh my god, sorry, you get 25% on Inyas, which are dirt cheap. You also get 10% from the elevated power charge mod on the helmet. So there's 35% there. You can also get that mod as one of the power charge modes on precursors rings. You can see on this one, I have 15% chance that if you gain power charges, you get your max charges, as well as +1 power charge. And on this one, I just have the +1 power charge. Ideally, you'd like to have both of those there. So, you know, ideal situation, about 65%, but really just using the boots is good enough. Boots and helmet is ideally the baseline you like to aim for. Getting the +1 power charge on the rings is far more important than getting that node, although that is one of the best things you can do to help single target, because obviously if you're just attacking one mob and Blade Vortex is only hitting one thing, it can be difficult, obviously, naturally, for it to generate enough charges for Discharge to be going off at its max. With respect to endurance charges, we have 6. You can get 7 if you were to path down here if you'd like. Or if you put on Death's Door, you could get 8. But I wouldn't suggest doing that. And obviously that just follows suit with Discharge because of Vol's devotion. That's, you know, one of the things with this build. Actually, this might be the only thing about this build that is the same as it used to be in the past. So yeah, now that we know how the charges are being generated for single target, we want to know why power charges and why that's super powerful with this, specifically more so than in the past. And that's the level of synergy that it has with, that the power charges have with a variety of different buffs that we have, especially as of this patch, since they added Forbidden Flame and Forbidden Flesh. Now, so a power charge typically would only give a character 40% increased crit chance, right? However, with our build, being that we're assassin, we get we get the +1 power charge, of course, but we also get 5% multi. All right. Now we also, on top of that, would go up here and we get 8% mana regen, 8% crit chance, 5% multi. And if you want to, you can also go 8% damage here, and then you would do the mastery where you get 3% damage per power, endurance, or frenzy charge. If you were to go that path there, this would be an you could also add this to the following math. We also get 5% increased damage per power charge here, 3% increased damage per power charge here, and because we're using Forbidden Flesh and Forbidden Flame, where we get another 5% increased power charge, so that's 13%. And we get 5, 8, 13, and then again, if you want another 11, you could have upwards of 24% increased damage per power charge. We'll say 13, so 13% increased damage, 8% mana regen, 48% increased crit chance, 10% increased crit multi, and then on top of that, we get the Militant Faith, which makes it so that power charges give us a more multiplier. So we also get 3% more damage, and then we also have Vast Power, which is on a medium cluster jewel, which gives us 3% area of effect. So in total, from our power charges, we can get 264% in my case with the gear I have, 200 just from the power charges. Not only, we also have the base damage for Discharge, but on top of that, we have 264% increased damage. We have 520% increased crit, 110% crit multi, 33% more damage, 88% mana regen, 33% increased area of effect. I feel like I'm missing one. No, I think that's it. But you get the point. The synergies that happen there are incredibly good. You also have other, depending on what kind of precursors you get, there's other things that you can scale with that. So for this one, we have attack and cast speed per power charge. So we would also get 11% attack and cast speed. In terms of the power charge generation too, I forgot to mention this. We have a variety of sources to do so. In the past, again, just swapping out a Vol's Protector for power charge on crit gem wasn't really sufficient. However, now we have a multitude of different ways in which we generate charges. So we have 10% on global 10% power charge on crit here, 15% global power charge on crit here. We have 20% on non-crit here. We have 10% chance on kill here. From Swift Killer, we get, which is what we're getting from our Forbidden Flame and Flesh. We have another 15% chance on kill. Then we can also, if you take Disciple of the Forbidden, which I wouldn't recommend because Discharge needs to actually get rid of the charges to do damage. So if you add a minimum charge, in my case it would only be expelling 10 power charges. Depending on what your gear is like though, how much increased damage you have, that could be worth it. Because this does give 8% damage per power charge, which again in my situation would be 88% increased damage. And then it also gives access to this, which would be another 3. And then with the the endurance charges as well, that's another 51%. So that's 130% increased damage. If you don't have many sources of increased damage, that might actually be more damage than the singular power charge. And if you do take this as well, that's another source of power charge on kill. So yeah, there's a lot of ways in which you can get a. Oh, sorry. We also, because power charge on crit now is a more multiplier per power charge, we also use it as a link on our discharge, which means that's that is also another source of generation there. So anytime any one of those sources, either through the global ones through shield charge, or discharge, or blade vortex, or any skill that you're casting that hits, anytime any one of those does crit, you can get 50% chance that I'm going from 1 to 11 charges. If you go back in this video and watch my power charge in the top corner, you'll see that they never really drop below 11. Actually, they shouldn't at all. So it'll always be in full swing there. Now, in terms of defensive layers, this build has, due to Watcher's Eye, we're able to get really easily source of Leech. We're going to run Vitality, which gives us the 1.2% global life leech. And as well on top of that, since Leech is dependent on damage, obviously, and needs to ramp up somewhat, we also have life gain for each enemy hit while affected by Vitality, which is incredibly good for Blade Vortex. And the combination of these two things gives you a huge amount of sustain, which is great. And this is definitely a much stronger suit than has ever existed in any previous iteration of the build. We also have Dual Curse. You can use, for mine I have Ellie Weakness and Enfeeble, but you could use, Temp Chains in there as well, depending on what you want. It is really easy to go try Curse as well. You can just go Whispers of Doom here. I wouldn't recommend anointing it, since we do anoint an additional charge, which is, the spending 3 points is much better than losing the charge there. Defensively as well, we have Mage Blood myself. The flasks have a lot of, you can decide whatever you want to use for flasks. For me, I have the quartz for the phasing, as well as the suppression. We have a granite flask, which gives us also stun immunity. And then we're using a diamond right now because it's a huge amount of overkill. We have the elevated spell crit here, as well as obviously the base crit that we get from being an assassin. And because of how many power charges we have, it's actually a waste for us to spend any points on crit on the tree because we crit cap so easily. So we're not using any points there, just to make it so that that is viable. And also in case, we're in the initial throes of combat where you want to be high crit. And it is important to be high crit pretty much all the time because, again, Blade Vortex does not have the same base crit as Discharge. So you do want that to be, somewhat high. That's why I run the increased crit strike chance gem in here. But in terms of points on the tree, it's not really necessary. Even using Arcane Potency, while it does give 40% multi for 3 points, which is very efficient, and we might consider switching into there because Discharge has access to jewels like this, quadruple multi jewels, which can give either 63 to 66% multi. Those are actually going to be pretty much always more point efficient than even the most efficient multi nodes on the tree that come naturally. But yeah, sorry, back to the defensive layers. We have the we have upwards of, right now we have 60%. I have offensive auras in right now, but we can switch into defensive ones where you can run 60%, phys mitigation, 60% evasion. You have over 5,000 life. I've got 5,200 now. We've got 30% suppression for spells. We've got, you can run the Immortal Call in there. You've got the endurance charges that are going off as well. We've got the max reses. You can change these flasks to be topaz, ruby, and sapphire if you'd like. We've got the curse immunity, stun immunity, elemental status immunity from purity of elements, and we're also running like 5 or 6 auras at all times. So you can see we put a lot of points into there, and as well we're running the double small reservations where we have 8% mana reserved, 8% mana reserved. We also have the T1 life roll there, which is real nice. But that allows us to run. We have 1, 2, 3. Right now we're just running 50% auras, but we can actually run 4 of them if we want to. So you can just change those as you wish. And that really is, I think, the benchmark of this build, or what this build is best at, is the malleability and being able to change it. Because the tree itself is basically just, a framework or an outline of the entire, the entire tree itself. You don't really have to go into the middle anywhere. You have access to 1, 2, 3, 4 if you'd like cluster jewels spots, and you can take as many real jewels in there as you want to. Because of that, it's very easy to change not only your tree, your cluster jewels, your jewels, and if you have mage blood, your flasks as well. But because of that, depending what the situation is, real easy to gear swap and base your character on what you need to do in that moment, which is one of the fun things of the build. Because as far as I know, I've been making this and working on this, without a guide or anyone to really talk to about it. I've done hundreds and hundreds of different iterations of this. This just happens to be the one that I'm using right now, so I wouldn't suggest following it as it is per se. But if you did want to get started with this, the only thing I would say is really necessary for it is the Squire. For myself, I've probably spent close to 2,000 exalts on the gear I have, and the variants of those gear as well, because I've got backup, like elevated backup gear, and multiple weapons, like extra jewels, to the point that I actually have extra quadruple multi-jewels lying around, extra weapon. You know what I mean? So it's definitely overkill on my part. You don't need to be that deep into it, but it does also highlight another benefit of the build, which for me is the scalability, because builds kind of boring if they're just all the basic pair of uniques, and then you're done. So let me know if you guys are interested. If there's anything more you want to know, let me know. And I know this video wasn't very short and it was kind of on my toes, but I just wanted to get this out there, and hopefully it resonates with some people who love Discharge as much as I do, and maybe make it a collaborative effort. All right, thanks a lot, guys. Have a good one. Peace.